In this episode of the Poultry Keepers podcast, Mandelyn, John, and Rip wrap up last week's discussion with part 2 of Culling with Clarity. So let's join them now.
John, what's your thoughts?
When it's for humane reasons, yeah, you do what you need to. There are some times where I will go through extraordinary efforts to save a bird. And one of those times is after a predator attack.
Yeah, that wasn't their fault.
It wasn't their fault. And if I have a pretty bad attack and lose several birds and one or two happen to survive, especially if they were an object of the attack and have been injured, I've actually sutured up birds before.
And they're surprisingly resilient to recovery in those instances.
They bounce back great. But
I think ducks are even faster. Ducks heal faster.
Yeah, for sure. But I believe that adds to that predator awareness trait that I'm always looking for. They've survived an attack. They've basically lived through it. Maybe they're going to impart that knowledge down either directly through a parental training.
They absolutely do.
Or genetically on an epigenetic development basis. But if a bird survives a predator attack, I want to keep their genetics around, even if it was just dumb luck, because there may be something in there that gave them that little edge to get away a second before the bird that was right next to them that didn't get away.
How do you guys actually dispatch a bird?
I have 3 different methods depending on age.
Cervical dislocation.
Cervical dislocation, but I have 3 different tools. So if they're like little bitty chicks that hatched and they're just not gonna do well, which is like 1 in 100, 1 in 150, something like that, I might have to take care of early. And I have a set of pruning shears, and then that fixes it right there. And then for older ones, I have a poultry dispatcher tool that's wall mounted, and that'll do it fast because my knife work is not my job. That's what my husband does. And I wasn't confident in it. And if you're not confident, you want to go with something proven and surefire, because to botch it makes you feel so awful.
Yes.
It's bad. So quick and sure is the approach, so that you don't have to carry around guilt that it took too long.
Those tools are handy. I've got one too, and that's what I use on older birds. But it's quick. It doesn't overly stress out the birds.
Yeah, low stress is key to me. I don't want them to even know it's about to happen. I don't want them to have any knowledge or feeling or anything over it, because that's what's fair to them.
Oh, absolutely.
But there are other places that some of these can go. We have a raptor rehabilitation center here, which will take live birds of certain sizes, depending on what they're actually working on rehabilitating. And then they also have a facility where they take care of the euthanasia. Oh, I can't even say that word, in a carbon dioxide chamber. So if you are a soft heart about it, you can usually find some place that will take them for you, as long as you're not too particular about what happens afterwards.
What about comparing culling between single purpose versus dual purpose?
I am a big fan of dual purpose, because you're going to end up with a lot of males that don't have anywhere to go. And they may be structurally sound with a solid temperament, but there's still nowhere available for them to go outside of your farm. And so that's where that dual purpose piece really fits in, because you get to be picky, but nothing's wasted.
Exactly. And I see too many times people go down to the feed store and buy a bunch of straight run chicks and suddenly realize they got a bunch of males they got to dispose of.
Yeah.
That's not an easy trick to do.
Especially when they're of a variety that's not ever going to get meaty. Because now you're looking at soup stock and bone broth and not much else.
That's pretty much it. Pretty much it.
And off of one bird, I can get 2 pints of broth. and 2 pints times however many birds, I don't even have room to store that much chicken broth. I'd rather have the meat.
Yeah, I
Well,
agree.
that's an important thing, though, is the dual purpose birds, they have a value through their entire lifespan. Whether it's for a potential breeder or not, they're always going to be a good egg producer or a good meat producer inherently. Otherwise, you don't have dual purpose birds. And oh, by the way, pick your top 10% to breed from, and you're good to go. It's as easy as that, folks.
Right now, this time of year is extra cockerel season.
Yeah.
So if you just scan your local ads, just look at how many are there for free. So that bird has been raised, fed, tended, and that
For at
you can
least
start listing them at
12
8
weeks.
weeks old and 20 weeks old and on through this whole summer. They're listing them free of charge. So all that feed, all that time, all that space, just to turn around and give it away for free, there should also be market value there.
Why are you giving away something that has value? I always look at that. If it's not worth going in your freezer, why do I want it?
Unfortunately, that's where a lot of chicken ends up, is a free rooster, because there's not enough homes. There's not. It's impossible.
And there's luckily people like in our neighborhood, there's 2 or 3 different people that I'm aware of that I could call up, and they just drive around once a week and take all these roosters and put them in a trailer, and they take them back to their farm and they finish them. And then the meat goes to local charitable organizations. But, that's literally taking a waste product that we're taking advantage of the fact that somebody has paid all this money to put into these birds just to give them away.
Right.
Try to recapitalize some of that and feed people in need. So that's actually a decent model, but it's a nonprofit model. Nobody's making any money off of this. We're feeding people the best we can.
Well, that's a good utilization. But when you look at any other type of livestock, the bottom of the market is always the meat value.
Yep.
For pig, for cattle, for
There's
goat, for sheep, the bottom price point is meat value, and chickens don't have that.
Go to any dairy and wave a $50 bill under somebody's nose for a 2-day-old male calf.
That's not true. Our beef market's gotten crazy.
It has here too.
We're all dairy up here. We don't really do beef unless you're into the specialty beef market. So all the male calves go to the beef auction and they feed into the food system. But that's part of, for any mammal to give milk, they have to give birth. So we're going to have 50-50, just like with chickens. You're going to have 50-50 male to female egg layers and roasters. You're going to have 50-50 milkers and beefers.
Now, when it comes to poultry, how picky is too picky when you're going through and making your decisions?
When you don't have anything left to select from?
That
When you
would-
start considering an outcross. Or maybe you were that bad to begin with. You don't know.
I think people can fall into the perfection trap, so to speak.
I've
And
been
if
there.
that bird is not perfect, it gets culled. And that can come back to bite you in a hurry, because you're gonna have a very narrow gene pool if you do that for very long.
I had a
like
very frustrating 2 seasons where I almost called myself out of my original flock, and those were the best ones that I had. But I tried to get too picky too fast, and that was a mistake. It set me back a year just to salvage what I had.
I think ideally I'd like to see about after I've worked with my birds for a while, I like to see about 80% of them that meet my goals. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm going to keep 80% of them, trust me. But with the top 20 to 10%, I like to err on 10%, are going to be the breeders that I keep.
Now, over their grow out period, do you have a method of when you're calling how many? Like, what age were you doing your first call versus what age you did your last call?
I would do my first cull at about 10 weeks. And then for females, because Rhode Island Reds are so darn slow to mature as males, females I could do comfortably at 16 to 20 weeks. As long as the feathers were fully developed. It was my key for going by those.
Yeah.
But males, it could take me 10 and a half, 11 months before I was comfortable culling those.
Now, at that 10-month point, what percentage of males did you have left?
I would shoot for 15% to pick through for breeders. 15
That's
to
about
20.
what I do. Yeah. Like the bulk before 20 weeks for sure, for the bulk. But that might be 60, 70, 80%. Now, the rest of them keep right on growing. And I keep dumping feed down their throat because I'm waiting on those final details.
I got to the point with my reds, and it took me a number of years to do this. But I could look at a bird when they were 10 weeks old, and I could predict fairly well what they were going to turn into. Now, I couldn't do it 100%. But by the time they were at that 4 to 5 months old, the keepers became pretty obvious to me.
And how many years did it take you to develop your eye to be able to do that?
8, 9 years before I was comfortable with doing it.
Yeah. That tracks because I'm at year 8 of doing this seriously, and I feel like I'm only just now pretty comfortable.
Yeah.
Only just now.
I think, Mandelyn, some of that is because we are naturally unsure of ourselves. And I have been known to go back and forth on a bird. Do I keep it? Do I cull it?
That's what that extra time is for.
Yeah. Jeez, I have done that. I don't know how many times. Now, my mentor, 10 weeks old, you'd look at him. That one goes in this pen over here because I'm going to keep it. This one goes in this pen over here because I'll sell it. He was incredible. But he'd been breeding them 50 years too.
So he knows.
Yes. And folks, the more you work with your birds, the longer you have them, the better you're going to get at culling and the faster you can go through a bunch of birds.
And you can't force that to happen any faster than it naturally will.
No. You may think you can.
You almost have to slow down to learn it faster.
Absolutely. This goes right back to the more time we spend studying and looking at our birds, the better job we can do and the faster we can learn to do it. But
there for a long time, I was sorting my birds without culling just to see if I was right and developing my methods based off of the theories, but doing nothing terminally. So I would sort among my pens and say, I think these are going to work out. I think these are going to end up as dinner grade. I think these are passable, but not quite what I'm looking for. And I do that 3-group split up, and then I'd keep feeding all of them to see when I was wrong, how I was wrong, or when I was right and how I was right. And it was expensive, but it was very highly educational. I learned a lot fast by not being too brash in my methods.
But you also get good confirmation that, you know what? Yeah, I was right.
Yeah.
About you.
Have you guys ever practiced what I call, for lack of a better description here in my notes, deferred culling, where you're not quite sure about a bird and you let it go and grow a little bit longer?
Waiting for confirmation is wise.
Yes.
Makes sense.
So long as you can afford to keep them and house them and give them all their fair treatment of their lifestyle. Like if you do it under crowded circumstances, it's not going to pan out as hoped. So you can really only do that if you can appropriately manage what you have and spend accordingly, because it's not a free adventure.
You bring up another interesting point, Mandy, is that the birds are going to perform differently on their development based upon their crowding or lack thereof. So by changing the crowding a little bit, you could greatly affect the development of a bird.
Which is why you should take notes of everything you do and how that turned out so that you can confirm with accuracy if it's something that really works for you.
And that's the key. Having a bird that develops amazing if they're entirely restricted and have a 10 by 10 run all by themselves doesn't do you any good if your infrastructure is not going to allow you to.
If you put one bird
to
in
get
its
to point
10
bird.
space, they don't have the competition to prove themselves.
So that's not a proven bird. And
That's a spoiled bird is what that is.
yeah. Yeah. So evaluating as a cohort or as a group is still has a huge importance, I believe.
I feel like my sorting and selecting throughout the ages gives them a level of stress just by me doing that then helps me a week or two after that with further refinement because of those who couldn't handle the stress of what I did a couple
Yes.
weeks ago.
I can see that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. There was an interesting question that was floating around in the groups about if you're moving, what would be
Yeah.
the best method? And I really thought about that for a couple of hours. And I said, the least stressful for everybody and everything involved is just move with your eggs. The birds aren't stressed. They're not going through the moving stress. The poultry keeper isn't stressed. And then you can build your system at your end as your new flock grows.
I built my
It's all
system.
about stress reduction on the keeper and the birds. And especially in a move, cross country is what they were talking about. I really think that is the less stress option for everything involved. And to reach back your birds with somebody that can always ship you eggs should you have a failure at the other end.
I really hadn't thought about what you're talking about very much at all, but it makes perfect sense, John. It really does. Well done. Mandelyn, let's talk for a minute, and we hit on it and then we moved on, but culling yourself out of a flock. I know you experienced.
I've done it numerous
situation.
times to completion as well, because I was looking for a certain timeline that my birds needed to perform within. And so I went through the gauntlet of breed choices, and then I figured out the nuance that bloodline has within a breed. And so I got pretty good at identifying by about 12 weeks if I was going to dump the entire flock and start over. And I did a lot of start over just based on 12 weeks. And then I got the advice, you should really breed another generation from what you started with to confirm that what you think is true. Then I was like, oh, okay, I'll try this. I'll feed them like I mean it. Like I really want to express everything in their genetics. I'm going to house them the best that I can. I'm going to give them ample space, fresh, clean water every day, top-notch nutrition, and let the genetics tell me. And then give those genetics one generation to prove what influence good husbandry and selection has. So I ended up doing 5 generations with Marans because I love that egg color. But also I needed manageable culls. I needed males who are freezer ready in less than 20 weeks. And it took every bit of those 5 generations to get there. But I lost the feather pattern in that process. The meatiest birds had the worst color. And I'm like, okay, I'm at that point of making a decision. Are these going to be ugly but useful or correct and skinny? And that's a hard choice to make.
And
But
this
then, yeah,
filial generation.
you can see really meaningful flock changes within 3 generations. You can get some proof of the method within 1 generation. After 5 generations, you ought to be somewhere. They're not going to be perfect and they're not going to be done, but within 5 generations, you should be somewhere.
Sure.
And that inkling of what could be should have happened in generation 3 with a little teaser at generation 1.
But also between F5 and F7 or filial generation 5 and 7, that span is when you are really need to be hyper vigilant on
You
your
should be
culling.
refining combs and little goofy details by 7.
Yeah, but
Well,
this is
that
also when
shouldn't
your
be
genetic
better.
outliers are going to pop up from your great-grandparents and your great-great-grandparents. Yeah. But by then, your line is going to be so well established that the outliers are going to be very dramatic and easy to spot. And you're going to go, where did you come from? Oh, and then if you know about your breed history, you can say, oh, I can see this is coming from the Rhode Island Red influence for whatever. And then getting through that.
And it a lot on your note-taking in backtracking. How did that happen? Hopefully that information is in your notes.
Hopefully.
But I tried American breasts. So far, I'm at 4 different genetic
I
adventures.
really hope that
What were you going to say, Rick? I really hope.
You broke up there, buddy.
Rib's got a good question, I
I'm
think.
saying, the question here is that the importance of patience and progression in breeding. You got to have patience, and it's going to take some time to get your birds to where you want them. And it's done in little steps. You don't. I've never felt like I made a giant leap with my birds. It was all.
When I spent the money on some really good birds from a best breeder I could find of the breed I wanted, that rocketed me ahead by 5-10 years, because I was just struggling with what I had, trying to breed them up, and it really wasn't a good genetic pool to start with. But getting a hold of properly bred to standard birds that had 20 or 30 generations of skillful breeding already applied to them made all the difference in the world. And in the end, it's far cheaper than struggling along with subpar birds.
John, let me ask you a question. In doing that, when you went from mediocre birds to superior birds, do you feel like that made you a better breeder in the long run?
More grateful for the generations and decades of work that other breeders have done before me, and more adamant about the need to continue this going forward. Because without it, we're going to lose everything. We need competent, dedicated breeders that are willing to do what's been done since the standard of perfection was published and keep this moving forward.
But did you realize that having better birds, or did you find that having better birds made it easier in the breeding process?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I had much less cull rate. The culls that did go towards food were much better for food value, better feed conversion ratio, better growth rates, better structural, just everything.
Do you feel like you learned more from the better bred birds?
I learn different. We know. I actually learn at a more deeper level by struggling and having to overcome challenges. It sets the lessons. So working with inferior birds and struggling through, I believe, made me appreciate the better quality stock for sure.
That's true. I had that same experience.
And
When
once I
struggled,
got them, it was so easy to move forward because I've already been through all the frustrations and struggles, and like, okay, I'm through that. Now all I gotta do is just keep this going. Apply everything I've learned to what, has been done, and just keep it going forward. If it's too easy, I don't think you learn anything. All you're
That's
doing is
true.
kind of, if you're just going, I read on the internet that if I did, this would be okay. And then you do, and it is. So you get this fulfillment that, oh, this advice from this person worked that time. So I'm going to follow maybe this other advice, which may not work so well.
that level of fulfillment, once everything you've learned comes into that culmination and you're like, wow, this is what it all meant.
This
And
is how it's supposed to
it's
work.
never been at 20 years because I spent so much time at the bottom of the market with the junkiest, worst hatchery source birds and going, how come these don't do the expectation? What's wrong? And then I went to the complete opposite end of the spectrum and I'm like, let's try exhibition. And I was like, wow, these are some pretty feathers.
Yeah.
But why am I only getting 80 eggs a year?
This is
Yep.
one of the reasons I'm really excited for this batch that you've got in the incubator now of the Chanticleers from Mark, because you're going to get to experience this.
Yeah, mine this weekend. Today is lockdown for my new little adventure, and I am expecting, which I
What
haven't.
is your fertility rate on shipped eggs?
Oh, okay. So this is the news that I have. Mark sent me 36 eggs. I had to pull 2 for lack of fertility. So I have 34 eggs that I haven't candled yet today for the final. We're on day 18, so today's the day.
All right.
And I set the same number of my own eggs, and I had to pull 3 of mine out.
Okay.
So the
So now
shipped
we're going to
eggs
look at
the shipped eggs were 1 egg better than my own. That never happens.
You're right. It never does.
So we'll see. I hope they're all still doing great.
Let's hope
I'm
so.
doing that after this.
Let's hope so. Gosh, folks, we have gone through another outline here.
We can almost keep going because the topic is so diverse and so nuanced and so detailed. Like, you can't beat yourself up, and you can't.
We will go on and we will beat ourselves up.
Well, yeah, that's probably my afternoon plan.
But I just want to tell our listeners, if what we talked about today gave you better insight or changed how you think about culling, share it with somebody that needs to hear it too. And we'd appreciate if you would subscribe to our podcast and leave a review, because that helps other folks find us. You can visit us at www.thepoultrykeeperspodcast.com. We've got a lot of episodes out there. We're starting to accumulate a good bit of bonus content. We post episodes, regular podcast episodes every Tuesday, and bonus content every Thursday and every Saturday. So
All for free.
all for free.
Actually,
Check it
you know
out.
what? I'd like to change that. This will cost you something.
Kinda.
Share this with somebody you know who could use this advice. We all have a
Absolutely.
poultry keeper that we know that's getting starting out. They say, hey, I know this podcast. Give it a listen. There's
Absolutely.
your membership fee.
I just figured it up. I made a post about it. Our little podcast that John and I started back a while back. We're only a year and a half old when you stop and think about it, John. But we started May the 28th was our first post.
That's right.
And remember how excited we were when we got 50 listeners? And I looked the other day, and I don't know how many listeners we have.
It's astounding.
We're getting over almost 9,000 downloads a month, and we're heard in 118 countries around the globe.
Which
That-
blows my mind because they're
Absolutely.
just chickens.
But their genetic expression is going to be based upon where these chickens are being grown and who's growing them. And every environment and every chicken keeper is going to be slightly different. And I'd love to hear from some of these people in other areas, especially about specific challenges. If you're in a dry area or a wet area, your experience can help other poultry keepers. So please consider sharing.
Not only challenges, but successes. What
Yeah.
successes have you had? Before we go, I just want to mention a couple of things. Folks, remember, you don't need to be perfect. You just need goals and a desire to be intentional. And every flock decision you make builds towards your long-term success and long-term goal. So keep learning, keep improving, and never stop breeding with heart and purpose. Thank you for listening, everybody. We'll be back next Tuesday.
Right on.